What brings you to Back Bay, Mr. Fletcher?
You know, I just love listening to podcasts in my car.
Broadcasting live and around the world. From Cabana One, the only podcast that's all ball bearings. Your ultimate source for everything Fletch.
Moon River. Whew. Thank you, Doc. You ever serve time?
Laker Jim and his beat reporters will stop at nothing to make sure Fletch lives forever. They don't shower much. This is FletchCast.
Thank you, Sammy, and welcome everybody to FletchCast. Now, we gave everybody more than enough time to see the new Confess Fletch. So, just a warning at the top. There are going to be plenty of spoilers in this episode. So, if you have not seen the movie yet, go out and see it, then come back and listen to this podcast because we are going to dive deep into Confess Fletch. We're going to let you know everything we loved, everything we hated, and all the gray area in between.
How gray?
Charcoal.
But before we get started, let me introduce my co-hosts, two men who will never be brainwashed by the shoe lobby, Jake and Big Bob.
I love that one.
Boys, welcome. How many times have you guys seen Confess Fletch?
I've only seen it 3 times, and they were all at home. We're supposed to get our first major hurricane of the year.
Saving the theater for after the storm?
I'm saving it for when I inevitably lose power and have to go, spend time in public places to get some air.
Jake, how about you?
So I've seen it 3 times. I'm going to see it tomorrow in the theater. My initial plan was to see it first day, but we had some family stuff come up, so that was delayed a week. So tomorrow afternoon, I'm seeing it in the theater to kind of cap off the first, 10 days or so that it's been out.
Are you taking the whole family, or are you going by yourself?
No, just me and the wife. We're going to get away and have an afternoon, a Fletch afternoon.
Perfect.
I will tell you, every time I've watched it, I've liked it more and more. Jim, how many times have you seen it now?
I saw it once in the movies. Well, I'm probably around five watchings. But I'll tell you guys, the reviews that Confess Fletch is getting are incredible. Something I did not really expect. Some of the headlines. Confess Fletch. Jon Hamm succeeds in bringing Fletch to a new generation. Confess Fletch, a criminally entertaining comedy. Confess Fletch lets Jon show off his lighter side without chasing the past. See what they did there? Chasing. Rolling Stone. Yes, there's a wonderful new Fletch movie starring Jon Hamm. Not that you'd know it exists. Great article, by the way. Rolling Stones. Go read it. Confess Fletch makes a case as one of the funniest films in years. Maybe that's a stretch, but I like it. Confess Fletch is Jon Hamm's best film acting yet. Rotten Tomatoes, 85% tomato meter on Rotten Tomatoes. And nowadays, that's really the reviews that matter.
Yeah, that's the critic score we're talking here.
Yeah, in the past, Siskel and Ebert, that was sort of the benchmark of you had to get past them. But really, Rotten Tomatoes now is the thing that people go to. So to have an 85% tomato score and a 74% audience score, which that was the one I kind of was more afraid of.
It is really just very refreshing to see that people are loving this movie.
And I think that people have given it a chance, and I think it's won some people over.
Yeah.
We were all nervous about how it would be received. The fact that those that probably didn't know a lot about Fletch have embraced it. And like you said, LJ, those that I think were more in the Chevy camp seem to have liked it as well. This also, I think, bodes well for the future. I think because it is so well received, more people will probably end up seeing it. Let's be honest. If the reviews are bad, it's not going to be very encouraging for someone to watch it. The fact that the reviews are so good, I think that only will improve at least the chances of us seeing Fletch's Fortune, etc., here in the next few years.
Right.
I've been seeing very little advertisements for this movie. I've only seen 2 commercial ads for it. And we're going to get into that aspect of the movie.
Well, I think that's been the biggest complaint. And I think we all have that opinion. You talk to anybody associated with the movie, they have that opinion too, that the promotion was just not there.
Even within a lot of the reviews, they say it's criminal that the promotion is non-existent for this movie.
He doesn't even know what bespoke means.
Doesn't even know what bespoke the fuck, dude.
I don't really know how they can hold the financial part against this movie if they know they didn't put the money into the movie.
Right. Yeah. And we just recently found out that the budget for this movie was $20 million.
Right.
Because I recently went to the movies and I was kind of hoping for a Confess Fletch trailer before, and I didn't get it.
Considering the fact that the trailer didn't drop until a week before the movie, I'm guessing it didn't make it into movie theaters.
Probably not.
You would think this type of mentality would be something if the movie was a dog, that it would just kind of be dumped. But the fact that the reviews are so good, people like it, why not promote it?
Yeah.
Right.
I've looked every day. It's been in the top 5 or top 10 every day on iTunes as far as rentals. I would be curious how much of revenue that actually brings in. And that's just iTunes. What about Amazon, etc.?
Yeah. I mean, at $20 a clip, you got to get 1 million rentals to make your money back. So, I mean, I doubt that's happened yet. And it's going to take quite a while to get there. But let's get started. Jon Hamm is starting to get reviewed as his best acting performance, which says a lot because he's won 2 Emmy Awards for Mad Men. And to consider this possibly his best role and his best acting performance, that says a lot. So, guys, in this movie, when you're watching it, when did Hamm become Fletch to you?
Well, for me, there's a line that stands out. And I wish this line was used more in the promotion of the movie, but it's the scene where he goes and he's going to meet with Frank. Prior to meeting with Frank, he's talking to Frank's receptionist. She says, tell me your name. And he says, Fletch. And she says, that your first or last name? And he says, just Fletch.
Yes.
That line really kind of sent a jolt through me. That's the one that really should have been the first thing that you saw in the trailer.
Do you have a meeting?
No, just tell him Fletch is here.
Is that a first name or a last name?
Just Fletch.
That would have really kind of said, like, hey, this is who Fletch is now. This is the character, and this is what's going to carry us for several movies. For me, that was the moment.
For me, I think it was both the interrogation scenes, the one in the beginning of the movie where he's just very relaxed. He has his feet up. He doesn't have his shoes on.
Where was I? Sorry. I'm so distracted by Mr. Fletcher's feet.
Not only did that show me, the kind of casual confidence of the movie Fletch, but also the book Fletch too. So I liked that first scene.
Never met her. At least not while she was alive.
The second scene was when they brought him back in, when he's talking to Monroe and Grizz, and he was just going through his kind of list of previous charges. And he says the line about the alimony.
100% of most of those were dismissed.
And I just thought that was a great line. And so it was those two scenes with those two, that banter that he had with those guys. I just really was like, this is definitely my Fletch. This is the Fletch from the books. But he still has a little bit of the movie Fletch in him too.
If you did it, Irwin, I will catch you.
I don't like people calling me Irwin.
And I thought those two scenes really, really stood out to me.
In that scene as well, Jake, when he's going and he's talking to Monroe in the office, just the little nuances, like the way there's a picture that Monroe has on the wall, and he tilts the photo.
Yes.
So it's not centered anymore. Just little things like that really are so, the physical comedy that you get from the character. That's where he really nailed it in a lot of cases. He does that a few times, in the movie itself, where just the little things, like that really, really were great little kind of nuances that helped a lot.
What about you, LJ?
I think there were 3 moments for me where I was like, wow, this is Fletch in front of me. I think one was the lunch scene in Italy with Andy.
Well, of course. Yes.
First time he ever meets her. The waiter comes over, asks if he wants anything to eat.
Are you paying?
That was very Fletch.
Yeah. Good call.
20 million hardly worth stealing. That whole interaction was very Fletch to me. I think the other part is when he says he's Mike Wahlberg, Mikey Mike.
The spray painting.
Oh, the van
and
scene?
then later on forgets the alias that he uses.
Right.
Reminded me of the cock toasting where he forgets, what he told Gail his name was.
What was your name again? What did I say?
And he was from something, and the acronym was CLAP.
Yeah.
That was good. We're still workshopping it. I think he said.
Be inspired.
The last scene was with Tasserly's ex-wife.
The decorator?
Yeah.
How about the fact that he wears glasses in that scene? That's like the only time we see a disguise in a way, you know?
Yeah, I wrote that down as like, that was the most Fletch scene from that reminded me most of the original movie.
I wrote that down as well.
Yeah, he's pretending to be Frank. He's kind of putting on a little bit of a voice.
Do you just hate people who are too poor to afford beauty? The worst.
Well.
Anyway.
And even though he's not in a disguise, he definitely is playing a character in that scene. And to me, that felt very Fletch. So it was those three moments where I really feel like he captured the character for me. And I stopped seeing him as Jon Hamm on the screen, and I started to see him as
Irwin, Maurice, Fletcher.
Absolutely. And it just goes to show that we think, and we all kind of are on the same Fletch wavelength with what really stood out to us.
Did you guys have a favorite moment or scene in the movie?
I wrote down a lot of lines that I loved.
Yeah, that too.
We'll get into the lines. I think for me, the scene with Frank and Fletch in the newsroom was my favorite scene.
Hi, Frank.
I don't know if it was just because of the characters we knew, Frank, Larry, Frank yelling at Larry.
Larry, you let this prick in?
But just being in the newsroom, it felt like I was watching Fletch in his natural environment.
The banter was there, the back and forth.
You still owe me money.
What? No, I don't.
Yes, you do.
For what?
For charging a fuckload of ridiculous shit to the News Tribune and leaving town. I had to pay for it.
Yes, absolutely. It was my favorite part. You know, I love the line when he says, "You rented a fucking carriage horse."
Language.
That was great. I wrote that down too.
I love that line. You guys know how I can go off on these mental tangents about. I started thinking, what did he rent a carriage horse for? And God almighty, like, where is that cutting room floor footage?
The scenes we mentioned previously, or where Hamm did it on his own, where he fletched it up on his own. This was my favorite scene where he interacted with somebody where it just felt great to me. I laughed so much in it. I loved John Slattery as Frank.
The Frank lines in that scene too are hilarious. I love what he talks about working with millennials, how they're not coming to work anymore. I guess probably because of COVID, working from home.
Where is everybody?
They're still working from home. Can you believe it? They're fucking babies. Place is like a silent retreat. And these goddamn millennials, they're so respectful. I can't tell you how much I fucking hate this place.
That is so like grumpy Frank, you know? Like, I love that.
You got to give it to Mottola. He told us why he did that. They filmed this during the pandemic. So to kind of like foreshadow people not coming back to work and continuing to home after the pandemic, you know, that was pretty cool because like that's what's happening right now in the world.
Right.
You know, people are still working from home. They're still not coming back to the office.
Smart thing. Yeah. Smart workaround. Yeah.
I really like that scene. In fact, that is probably my favorite scene too, is the Frank scene. But did you guys like the scene with the Commodore at the yacht club?
Yeah,
I thought
yes.
that was very Fletch-like too, when he was discussing his uncle.
Absolutely, yeah.
And he said he got chopped up in a propeller and he looked like sauce.
Oh, good Lord.
Just a mess.
I'm going to throw something out at you guys. When we talked to Greg Mottola, he mentioned that he would have put Chevy in it if he had a part that would have been suited for Chevy. That part would have been perfect for Chevy.
That would have probably been the best suited one, yes.
He would have walked up on him and played the Commodore role. As Jon Hamm is telling him just the most crazy story about how the uncle died. Can you imagine the faces Chevy would be making?
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, he could kill that part. And in a way, it would have been a face-to-face passing of the torch between Chevy and Jon Hamm.
Mm-hmm.
That would have been a perfect role to put Chevy into.
I've talked about this before, and we mentioned it when we talked to Greg Mottola, but I love the character Grizz. One of the funniest physical comedy scenes in the movie, for me at least, where I laughed pretty hard out loud, was the scene when Grizz is eating in her car and she gets the milkshake all over her. And I love the way when Fletch gets away from her and waves to her. I love the way she's at a distance watching him, and then she still takes a sip of the milkshake. like, oh shit, he's gone. I'm gonna have my milkshake. Just take a sip of the milk. You know, I love the fact that she does that little physical comedy there too. That made me laugh a lot too. I thought she was absolutely a show-stealing character for that movie.
Nice job, Chris. Take 5.
What lines from the movie are going to become classics one day? I think without a doubt, the 5-star quote is going to be the thing that carries on.
5 stars.
Yes. Yeah. Which, you know, Greg Mottola did tell us exclusively that was improv from Jon Hamm. You know?
And in fact, at the end of the credits of the movie, they say it again. At the very end, it says 5 stars.
Nice job, Grizz. 4 stars. Your back seat's filthy.
That variation made me laugh.
For me, the other line that really jumped out was the pig orgasm line where Grizz, at the end, that last little jump with comedy.
Dang, pigs have crazy long orgasms.
I think it could have been phrased funnier with some cursing and everything, but yeah, that was a great line too.
Yeah. And a line that Jake has mentioned previously that I love when he comes into the neighbor's house.
Are you hungry?
Oh, no, I ate yesterday.
Yeah, that's a great line. I like when Fletch gets out on bail and Grizz is standing there outside and Fletch goes, "How can I make this up to you? How you set for luggage?"
Is that a book line or is that just something you think he improvised?
No, I thought that was really good.
That is a great one, yeah.
And I love when he's just walking by the cops after he gets out of jail and he says,
Go Lakers.
and they just give him a look.
Well, that would be a line meant for you.
I like when the townhouse owner walks in during the dinner party at the end and goes,
Am I sure? No. Maybe.
Yeah, that's a great one. What about the line of "I'm an open book"?
Yeah.
I thought that was a good creative kind of meta line because obviously the character is a character that came from a book. I just thought it was a pretty cool, intentional kind of like, for book fans.
Yes. I love that too.
Come on, Inspector. I'm an open book.
It was almost like Hamm's version of Fletch winking at the audience.
Yeah. What about our least favorite scene? We were talking about our favorite scenes. What was your least favorite scene? I'll start. I thought the dinner scene at the end was a little much. I just thought there was too much going on.
Okay, a lot of balls in the air, right?
Fletch, what did you do now?
I thought it wasn't like super duper funny. And the way this Andy kind of left abruptly seemed a little forced. So that was the only thing I thought that I didn't really care for was that scene.
I mean, if we're going to talk about where the movie missed the mark, I think at the top of all our list is the theme.
Sure.
I still believe this movie could have benefited greatly with the music from the original soundtrack. I think Fletch's theme is the same as James Bond's theme. You wouldn't make a James Bond movie without the theme, even though you're changing actors and changing directors and everything else. That was the biggest miss for me and the hardest thing to swallow.
The Falkmar theme, yeah. And Bit by Bit.
Yeah, Bit by Bit would be great.
You mentioned Bit by Bit, and I don't want to forget this. Stalled Movies created a mashup of the Stephanie Mills 80s music video for Bit by Bit, but they inserted scenes from Confess Fletch. It's flawless. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Go check it out. Stalled Movies on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, wherever they are, you'll be able to find it. We post it on our social media too. As far as scenes I didn't like, I don't know if it was a whole scene. I feel like the kitchen scene with the neighbor went on a little long. Yeah. I felt like certain gags, somebody catching on fire unknowingly and then being put out by the other person, that's like an old gag. That wasn't very funny, and you kind of see that coming a mile away.
Kind of unnecessary.
I previously said I didn't like the macchiato line.
Oh, yes, that's right. That's right. We could have inserted something in there.
Maybe it's from a lack of not paying attention because I'm infamous for that, but I don't understand how the van scene really plays into to an extent that it was needed.
So here's what happens in the book. See, what happens is Fletch puts graffiti on the van right after he buys it, and that's an excuse to get it painted. So at the end of the movie, it's painted, I believe, black. Yeah, I think he bought it. It was blue. He pulled it into the garage and just wrote graffiti on it. And then he took it to another place to get it painted because he said I think he was a plumber or an electrician or something. And it was his work van and he needed to get it painted.
See, to me, what a missed opportunity. You could have put like Fat Sam's Burger Shack or something on the side of it,
Yes. Oh my gosh, that's a great idea.
I mean, and honestly, I understand that we've already talked about it in previous episode. We talked about how certain characters they couldn't get the rights for Underhill, but man, oh man, missed opportunities.
There were a lot of scenes dedicated to the van being painted. Which probably could have just been done quicker. One other missed opportunity, I think, for a joke was in the book, Fletch writes, "You must be high. on the top roof of the van, which is a funny joke to airplanes or whoever can see it overhead.
Yeah.
And it would have been a funny callback as the movie's ending, a nice overhead shot of the van pulling away. You know the paintings are in it. You see the joke on the roof. And because the painting and the whole thing behind painting the van really comes full circle at the end of the book, the very, very end. Flynn questions Fletch about the van, and the color comes into question. And that's kind of how the Count gets away with the paintings in the book, because Flynn doesn't recognize the color of the van at the very, very end. So it doesn't really have the super importance as it has in the book that it had in the movie. It didn't necessarily need to be drawn out in multiple scenes like it was in the movie.
Sounds sketchy.
Okay, and one last thing, kind of question. Maybe they had no choice here. And then we'll go back to the more positives. But I think by Larry not knowing Fletch when he walks up to her, I mean, does that undo the Fletch universe of the original movie?
Yeah.
That is a retcon that I do not like. You know, you talk about changing the narrative and everything, and I didn't like that. I thought that Larry should have seen Fletch coming and jumped out of her seat to give him a big hug. You know?
I agree. She should have been on the phone, saw him coming, and been like, oh my God, Fletch. And then he could have done something funny with her while she was on the phone, gives him the biggest hug.
Yeah.
And then into the newsroom.
Yeah, her having no prior knowledge of who Fletch is, again, like, why?
I agree. What's the point of even calling her Larry? I mean, there's just no point in it.
Exactly what you said.
Yeah.
Changing the narrative undoes the first movie. That's not what Mottola was going for. He did say that the Stanwyck story, the first movie, did happen to this Fletch. So that part.
Yeah, a little bit of a confusing, I don't want to be as negative to say the word letdown, but just a confusing idea.
I agree. It was just kind of not really needed or not executed the way we thought it would be.
Right.
It's funny because I love the book and I read it quite a few times, but I will tell you that the Countess for me really just didn't do it for me. I guess just the way she really didn't have a purpose.
Oh, you bet your big cock I'm going to be in the way.
There wasn't really anything to her.
Flesh. I told you, I no sleep with you.
She just wasn't really fleshed out as a character. I just really didn't really care for her.
Where are my paintings?
What is she talking about?
It's the Picasso here.
Do you think it was the wrong choice of person they chose, or do you think maybe just the delivery execution wasn't there?
No, but she had a lot more to do with the story in the book, because in the book, we can talk about it now, Andy and the Countess were behind stealing the paintings.
I loved my Mandy. I did not steal the paintings.
They blew town at the end of the book, and Fletch gave the paintings back to the Count, and that was
Some
it.
more retconning, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so I just thought that was underutilized, a little underwritten.
I think that's a pretty fair thing to say.
Another gray area for me was when Fletch finally gets arrested for murder. And as we know, Monroe takes his time and never makes mistakes. So he is determined Fletch is the murderer. How does Fletch get out on bail?
Yeah, that's what I was curious about that too. I was like, how did he get out if he's being charged for murder? And in the book too, they were broke. They didn't have any money.
Well, you always have Underhill's American Express card, though.
That's true.
Now, it's weird that at that point, Grizz and Monroe have determined that Fletch is a murderer. He's murdered somebody. Yet when he gets out on bail, him and Grizz are very jokey and chummy together.
That's true too. That's a good point.
Right.
Just a little bit of what they call plot holes.
Yeah. And for me, I think the biggest wire that didn't get connected for this movie, other than the music, was, and I've said it before, and I'm not going to harp on it because I don't want people to take this all as negatives. This is just a part of the podcast where we're talking about some of the negatives. The lack of the over narration of Fletch wasn't there in the movie. I think that was a major oversight, or just a decision that was made. I've said this before, but the brand of Fletch is in the movies itself is that over narration, where he gets a lot of really funny jokes in, and also kind of sets up some of the storyline. It's a mystery movie. It's a mystery movie. So, you want to hear his mindset of, of a whodunit. You want to hear his thought process. And the fact that it wasn't there, for me, that was the biggest miss of the entire movie. I don't care about Easter eggs that they could have taken care of, or music. I think that was the biggest miss overall, is the fact that wasn't there. Having that Chevy Chase voice, with the Faltermeyer music behind it. Again, shame it wasn't there, but maybe for the future it can be.
I agree with you. The movie could have used that for sure. And I think we could have gotten in a lot of jokes that way. I think we also could have determined how smart Fletch is and how good of an investigative reporter he is. He went around telling everybody he was a famous investigative reporter.
I was a reporter of some repute. Well, I did put quite a few prominent people away when I was a very famous reporter at the News Tribune in Los Angeles. I was an investigative reporter of some repute.
That would have been a perfect avenue to delve inside the brain of this incredibly smart investigative journalist.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's poker player mentality where you don't show your hand, but you know that you have the best hand, but you're not gonna you're gonna bluff, and there was none of that.
More in tone to the books, and Mottola had mentioned this, which I did like, though, is that Fletch at least thinks he's the smartest guy in the room, but a lot of times he's not. And the ending of the book is very similar as far as like Haran being the killer and things like that. So I did appreciate that he made mistakes, that he wasn't perfect.
Yeah, he was fallible.
So I really did. I really appreciate the fact that they did keep that. And we can talk about this. There are a lot of nods to the other books that and Confess itself, which I really, he used he used Ralph Locke, which I thought was really good.
Well, he told me his name was Ralph Locke,
the cowboy painter,
which I love that they kept that.
I'm researching a book, the definitive biography of Edgar Arthur Tharpe Jr.
They mentioned Clara Snow, which was awesome.
Great Easter egg, yeah.
Just be a real shame if Daphne found out that you defiled Clara Snow in the supply closet all those years ago. I mean, especially today's climate, you were her boss.
Yeah, they used Inspector, which was good. They didn't have to do that.
I'm Sergeant Inspector Monroe.
Inspector? Like at Scotland Yard?
They kept Monroe at least an inspector. They mentioned the murder of the councilwoman with an ice pick. That was in the book.
The mayor bestowed that special rank on me after I saw the murder of a city councilwoman. She got stabbed multiple times with an ice pick in her own bathtub.
I mean, I guess if you work in politics, you probably do have to take a lot of baths.
The fact that he did have bare feet, that was kind of something that was in previous novels that, Fletch was always walking around with bare feet.
And even Frank mentions it because it's something that in the books, Frank's super annoyed by.
Almost great seeing you again, Frank.
Just glad you kept your fucking shoes on.
Another book reference, kind of subtle, but the bad check charge that Monroe mentions.
I looked into your criminal record.
And?
Bad check charge.
Is a reference to the check he wrote Gillette.
Yes.
Out of the checkbook that he found on the beach in the first Fletch book.
Yep, that was another one.
Hey Jake, what about his pen name or his alias that he brings up?
Well, he's known as Peter Fletcher. In the book, he introduces himself to Flynn as Peter Fletcher. Haran knows him as Peter Fletcher. He only used the Ralph Locke when he was calling the airlines to do some investigating on when Connors was coming in. So that was. I don't know why they went with that.
Yeah.
I was thinking, and I don't know if we discussed it before, I have a couple ways where you could at least use the word under, or you could almost get away with it. Like, hi, sir, what's your reservation? And he could say under, at least start it, and then get interrupted. So you could say under, right, and then someone yell Fletch or something like that. So
yeah, that's a great idea, Jake.
You don't know whether he was going to say Underwood or Underhill. If you just got under,
you're firing on all cylinders.
Yeah.
That is brilliant right there.
Yeah, you could even say the name Ted to make it even closer.
Yes, exactly.
And say, let's say when Fletch needed bail, he's talking to Andy on the phone. He says, Andy, go in my top drawer. There's an American Express card. The name on the card should be Ted Under, and maybe someone in the jail says, Fletch, time's up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then maybe says to Andy, like, it's okay, we were in the war together.
Guys, that's top notch.
So there's a way you could get around the movie.
That's good thinking.
Well, that's a good segue. Speaking of movie references, what movie references did you guys pick up on?
Well, the Lakers hat is obvious.
Lakers fan?
What do you think?
I know we were going to talk about the biggest surprises of the movie. And I'll be honest, the biggest surprise for me was them using the dialogue from the first movie at the end of this movie. I was completely blown away by that. And in fact, I rewinded it immediately because I was like, did I hear that right? And played it again. And I was like, I cannot believe they used that. That was a great callback and the biggest surprise for me.
Okay, let's compare the two lines of dialogue from the bad guy reveal scene between Stanwyck and Haran. First, Stanwyck.
I was already prepared to commit one murder, ass face. What makes you think I won't commit two, huh? Whoops.
All right, now Haran.
I was already prepared to commit one murder tonight. What makes you think I won't commit two?
Whoops.
I love it. I love it. That was genius.
Yeah.
You know,
the Moon River would have been great.
I agree. And we obviously we talked to Mottola and he said there were a bunch more planned that they got shot down.
That would have been a really funny scene.
Yeah.
How much is Moon River?
Yeah.
I mean, how much is Moon River? I mean, you and I could probably get a GoFundMe together to get that in the movie.
I was just going to say that. You know, and think about it. If the band's playing Moon River and Chevy walks up to him on the boat.
Yes, as the Commodore.
I just got goosebumps the way that scene just fell into place. But it's true. I'm somebody that likes a lot of references, likes a lot of fan service. I walk away from a movie really enjoying those things.
Unfortunately, we didn't get enough of it. But again, this isn't the end. We could be seeing more movies. We could be getting more money. I mean, we talked about how this movie had a $20 million budget and went over budget, and they had to pour their own money into the movie. Jon Hamm had to pay, was it 60% of his salary back? And
yep.
Yeah, that was shocking to us to read, that Jon Hamm gave back 60% of his salary and Greg Mottola gave back a portion of his too, just to film 3 more days.
Yeah.
Finish the movie and get 1 day in Italy.
Which tells me that the studio didn't have enough faith and didn't give it enough breathing room to make it as great as it could have been. Hopefully the studio's smart, and I blame the studio. Hopefully the studio smartens up for any future Fletch movies, and we get a better budget and we get way more support for the next one, so we don't have to deal with this bullshit of, we couldn't get Underhill, or we couldn't get Moon River, or we couldn't get Falsmeyer, whatever. Let's not dwell on what we couldn't get. Let's just get it for the next movie, and let's just make this a home run.
Jake mentioned some of the biggest surprises, and we touched on it before, but the character of Grizz really was a huge surprise for me, because when I saw her on screen, one of the first things she does is sort of like fumble her pad, and I'm thinking, oh my God, okay, I've seen this character a million times.
Yeah.
But really, as the movie went on, she started out a little mousy looking and and I feel like as the movie went on, she was cute as a button by the end.
I was thinking the same thing.
She was the Larry of this movie. You fall in love with her as the time goes on.
That's a great comparison.
She was my favorite character in the entire movie overall.
I liked her way better than I like Monroe. I mean, her delivery was great.
Yeah.
Aiden Mayeri.
I really like her.
Such compassion.
Credit to her and credit to Greg Mottola for directing that. That worked well.
I thought Slattery I thought he knocked it out of the park too. I was surprised just how much I liked him. And I was surprised how much he was kind of grizzled and cantankerous.
He was a throwback.
He really was. And just dropping F-bombs left and right. Oh
absolutely.
My gosh, it was so funny.
Just disgusted by what the world has become.
And yes.
Yeah. Grumpy is the best way I think to describe him.
Remember, and he definitely looked a little bit more disheveled than we thought he was. Because remember, we were watching the trailer, and I think you guys were like, "Oh, he looks a lot more clean cut." But I mean, he looked pretty frumpy. I think. In the scenes he was in, his hair was kind of sticking up, and
you should be able to smell. You should be able to smell Frank from a room away.
Right. Yep.
I love the line when Fletch says, "Didn't you bring anyone from LA?" And he says,
"Just Pete, who does the jumble."
Hey, Pete.
Hey, Fletch.
Jesus.
It does the jumble.
I hate Pete too.
Mr. Excitement.
Which I theorized that's supposed to be Agent Cowboy.
Yeah, very well could be.
Overall, from hearing about the movie being made to the casting, watching IMDb, to wondering when the hell the trailer is going to drop, and finally getting the trailer, finally getting a copy, an advanced copy of it, finally seeing it all put together at once. What are your guys' final takeaways, Jake?
I think this, at the end of it all, is a movie that is for a true Fletch fan, a fan of the books. I think, and I asked Jason McDonald what he thought that maybe Greg would think of it, and he told me that he would have loved it. He said when he would see Fletch in Rome on a Vespa, he said he would have loved it. He said just seeing that alone would have made him so happy. And for me, as a huge fan of the books, I came away very, very pleased with it. I thought the tone was right. I thought the writing was really good. I thought it was edited really good. I thought it was sharp. I love the book itself. I thought they took a lot from it. Yes, of course, they made some changes, but we know that's always the case. But at the end, I was very, very happy with it. This is a movie that I think we can build on to for future movies. So I think it's a wonderful start. I mean, if we had to grade them, I would definitely give it a solid A.
Hallelujah.
I agree. I'm always somebody that looks at the positive rather than the negative. You know, for decades, we've been waiting for another Fletch.
30 plus years.
Yeah, we got a movie that had a lot of great to take away from it. And to me, to step back into the world of Fletch for an hour and a half was fun. I really let my expectations go and just enjoyed the movie and didn't think about all the things we talked about today. I knew we would have to look at this movie in a deeper way. And then we did so on this podcast. But when I just sat there and watched it as a movie, it made me smile to see that Fletch was alive again.
And I like that there were some subtle hints of the first movie without knocking us over the head with them. But I do agree. There could have been a few more. I know there's some limitations. Yeah. Again, maybe we'll get those in future movies. But I think you have to be pleased. And you're right, Jim. Just to have that character alive and back on the screen is enough to make a lot of people happy, including myself.
My take is this. I personally want to thank Greg Mottola. I want to thank Jon Hamm. I want to thank the family for allowing, this to be done. I think that they had a huge mountain to climb, and I think that they did the best with what they were given. I would like to absolutely shame the studio for putting a $20 million tag on something that deserves so much more. I feel like the people that put their passion, the people that put their love of the character and the stories into this movie, thank you. But the people that, whoever it was that decided that they weren't going to give this movie an extra dime, they weren't going to give this movie any support, because there's somebody out there from whatever studio it was, whether it's Miramax or Paramount or whoever. Shame on you for not giving this more and not putting more effort into it. You're clearly not a Fletch fan. You clearly are just somebody sitting behind a desk who has no appreciation for how great a property Fletch is and what it could be. And I hope you smarten up in the next potential offerings, whether it's another movie, another 2 movies, another 10 movies. I hope you smarten up and realize what you have in your hands and give this way more support, way more. When I say support, I don't mean just financial. I mean, the little things that have to be done to make sure that you can get a name like Underhill in a movie, or the character Larry, without having to go and, sneak it in there. Because this was good, but it could have been great. And I blame whoever it was in the studio that didn't see the vision to make it great. And that's really all I have to say about it. I liked it a lot, and you guys have already. I'm not going to beat a dead horse, or molest a dead horse for that matter. But I will definitely say, let's get more of this, and let's get somebody from the studio to really back this and make this something really spectacular, because damn it, we deserve it.
Yeah, I think Jon Hamm was on Howard Stern, and he said when they were going to make the movie, they thought to themselves they were going to just approach Netflix. Netflix would just throw money at them, buy it, and they'd be on the road to making all 10. And when that didn't happen, and every other studio they pitched it to said basically, who cares about Fletch anymore? I think the critics and the audience and the fans have spoken. A lot of people care about Fletch. It's something that people have been waiting for, people have been dying for, and I do think they can certainly improve on what they've started with.
Yeah. But it's a great base. And honestly, look at your reaction to this movie. Look at the audience scores. Look at the critic scores. Smarten up and realize what you have, and don't make your producers put their own money into a movie in the future. Help them. Don't hamstring them. Make this something that could be really special for the fans of the books, the fans of the movies. Give me something great to watch, not something good to watch. Let's get this going. Let's get 10 movies out of this, and let's make this something that could really be, another Jason Bourne, or another Bond, or another Indiana Jones, whatever. Another great series that people could talk about for years. Otherwise, find another studio. Find somebody who's as passionate as we are and as they are.
Couldn't have said it better myself. I mean, shame on the people that didn't believe.
Well, it's nice to know that really we have gotten the last word, because I don't know how you could have watched it and had the opinion afterwards that this is not going to work. I really believe that if this had some decent promotion, this really could have opened well and played a long time. Like, I think it's one of those mid-range movies that, maybe opens with like 10 million, but continues to play, for weeks and weeks. And at the end makes a solid 60 or 70 million.
One more thing, since I'm all piss and vinegar fired up right now, to whoever gets their hands on this next, whether it's, again, Mottola or whoever, don't be afraid to reach out to us and hire us very cheap to give you. We can write. We have no credits under our belt. Somehow I'm on IMDb right now, and I have no idea how I'm there.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't know how the hell my name's on IMDb, but for Christ's sake, if my name is going to be on IMDb, let me at least get a writing credit. I could pitch lines. The three of us could write a hell of a Fletch movie, and we will if we have to.
Absolutely, we've got enough clout. We could definitely contribute. You're exactly right.
Yeah,
you're exactly. But it's people like us
for scale
and people that are listening that we really have to be on the ground, boots on the ground, and just continue to spread the word, because that's is the awareness. We have to make people aware that this movie exists and that people should see it. And if you like it, please tell other people, because that is the only way we're going to be able to see more. I would definitely recommend picking up Fletch's Fortune, because I know that's the next movie that they want to be made. I guarantee you will love that book as well. So again,
that was a bit of an Easter egg too, Jake.
Yeah.
That was a bit of an
Yes, you're
Easter
right.
egg too.
Actually, I'm glad you mentioned that. That is one thing that I did forget to mention was the very end. I think I had mentioned it to Mottola there that, they set up Fortune at the very end when Frank called Fletch on the boat, talking about Walter March turning over his media empire to his son. That was right out of the book. So although, I don't want to get into too much on Fletch's Fortune. That's not quite how the book is set up, but it's definitely mentioned.
Doesn't matter.
And that's
Paramount.
right out of
Listen
Fletch's
to what
Fortune.
Jake is saying right now and give it more than 20 million.
Yeah, that is right out of Fletch's Fortune. And I'm telling you, Fletch's Fortune is such a funny, good book. So if you want to know what happens after Confess, pick up Fletch's Fortune. BlackstonePublishing.com.
Well, that about wraps up this episode of FletchCast. We'd like to thank you so much for listening. It was so much fun to start to break down the new movie. And we'll be talking more and more about Confess Fletch as the weeks go on and on. We want to remind you that Greg Mottola is coming back on the show, and we would love for your questions to be answered by the director of Confess Fletch. Now, to get your questions in, you're going to have to call the FletchCast hotline. The number is 267-714-6799. Call and leave us a voicemail. Don't forget to leave your name and where you're from, and we'll try to get as many questions answered by Greg Mottola as possible. We want to remind you that Blackstone Publishing has re-released Confess Fletch, but this time with the brand new Jon Hamm cover, and it looks awesome. It's the poster of the movie, and it looks just really sweet. Fortunately for Blackstone, it's almost impossible for Jon Hamm to steal a book from an online store. So you're going to have to go on and buy it, John, and everybody else that wants it. But the good thing is, if you go to blackstonepublishing.com, they have a special deal for the Fletch novels if you buy the whole series, and I think even if you sign up for their mailing list, you get 20% off anyway. So head on over to blackstonepublishing.com and pick up the new Confess Fletch novel today. All right, boys. That was a great episode. That was a lot of fun. For Jake and Bob, I'm Laker Jim. We're going to go catch the last 10 minutes of Dynasty. See ya.
All right, guys. Later.
Five stars.